Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mama Making Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, then welcome back. Today, I am very excited to have Dr. Kim Van Dusen on the podcast. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, registered play therapist, and founder of The Parentologist, a family and lifestyle brand bringing a therapeutic twist to everything parenting. She's the author of Parenting Through Play, Creative Strategies for Building Better Behavior, Deeper Connection, and Positive Communication. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit more about you, who you are, where you're from, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm a mom of two. I always start with that because I wouldn't be here if I wasn't a mom. Because everything I do, whether it's as a mom or a therapist, professionally or personally, it's everything revolves around parenting. And so I'm from Southern California and raising my two children. I have a 12-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. And you mentioned the other business side of my life, most prominently right now, getting ready for my book launch, my Parenting Through Play. It's right here. And I just got my first copy from my publisher, and it's definitely been a journey. When I started the Parentologist 10 years ago, I wasn't sure what to expect. I started off as a blogger, and then all of a sudden became a content creator because that kind of shot off in a whole nother direction after about 2018. And then around that time, I think early 2019 is when I started writing, and I went a very traditional route as far as getting a lit agent and then, writing a book proposal and then getting it, out to publishers, and got a book deal about 2 years ago. And so this has been a 5-year plus process. And so to finally see it in print and it's going to be in bookstores in 2 months, it's really surreal because it's been a long time coming with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But it's been great. And I think it's going to just be a total game changer for parents. And it's going to help so many families out there. And that's really what I intended. So I'm just happy to see it and hopefully the hands of so many people that will change their lives.
Yes, that's so exciting. Tell us a little bit more about the Parentologist. What is it? Why did you start it? All the things.
Yes. Okay. So I started it really because I'm a child play therapist. And so professionally, I have a private practice where I really specialize. I always say kids 0 to 10. But because my first, and well, not my first client, but my youngest client was 18 months. And the parent came to me wondering if their child was behind developmentally and if there was maybe I could give them resources to possibly test for things like autism and, other neurodivergent type challenges that the child was going through to see what my thoughts were on that. So I've worked really with young toddlers all the way through elementary school is really my sweet spot. And so when I started the Parentologist, I really wanted to have a platform where I was there to support parents, specifically more moms. I do have a lot more mom followers than I do dads, but I do have a lot of dads out there. So shout out to all of them. But I really started it to kind of be a one-stop shop for parents where they could come and they could get, tips and information and advice on anything mental health, anything parenting, motherhood. I was going through the motherhood, when I started it, my kids were very little. I had a toddler and an infant. And so it's really grown through the years with them and all of my parenting stages I've had thus far. And it's really grown. Again, started as a blogger, but then I started my podcast in 2021. And then now I'm an author. So I've really tried to evolve, not only with technology and social media and the things that I feel like people are gravitating to. I mean, people really aren't necessarily reading blogs like they used to. Now everything's about Substack and not on there yet. But really, just like I said, just a place where I could grow a platform, grow a community that really supports motherhood, parenting, mental health, and wellness are really my pillars that I really try to focus on. And I try to be a little bit of everywhere, be on social media, be on my blog, be on my podcast, and now be in, people's homes with my book to really just support them in whatever they're going through in any of those 4 categories.
Yeah, that's so amazing. So tell me more about play therapy. Why play therapy? Why did you get into this specialty? And why do you think it's so important?
So I have to say, when I was getting my doctorate, play therapy was not on my radar at all. At the university I was going to did not have any courses on play therapy. Working with children was not even on my radar. And it's funny because when I meet therapists now, tons and tons all over the country and even internationally, most don't work with children. It's very rare to find someone who actually works with a child and who likes it. We're very few and far between. I was going out and seeking out to be a couples therapist. That's where I really thought I wanted to be. And once I started doing couples therapy, I hadn't been in a marriage yet. I got married my husband, who we met in the doctoral program together, and he is a clinical psychologist and works with solely adults. He can't fathom working with kids. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to work with adults. Like, I don't want to go there. Like, kids is so great. But one of my colleagues in my grad program took a play therapy class. And it was the first time I ever heard of it. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, but it sounds kind of fun. Like, I had to go to a different university to get a whole set of classes and credentials and things like that. So it's a lot more coursework. I think the coursework took about 2 years. I think there was about 32 courses I had to take in addition to all my doctoral program and my dissertation and so forth. And it was a lot more money, again, a lot more time. But after my first class, I completely fell in love. I was like, oh, this is what I was meant to do. And I don't think I even had my first child yet. Like, I think I was working in schools at the time, doing my practicum work and getting my therapy hours. You have to get 3,000 in California. So that's a lot. And I was working in schools and working with young children. I loved it. I loved it. Just loved being around their energy and just loved being around children. So when I had my own children, everything just kind of fell into place and everything clicked. And so I took more play therapy courses and then realized, oh, that's my niche. Like, that's where I want to specialize in. That's where I feel most comfortable in. And it's really how I see, not only how I conceptualize therapy and with my clients, but it's really how I've conceptualized being a parent. And that's what made me inspire me to write the book. Cause I thought, oh, all these things I'm using in practice, whether it's at home or in the office, like, are really good. Like, they're evidence-based tools that I'm using and they really work. And I felt like I need to share all these secrets with parents because I have a lot of goodies that I'm hanging on to and I need to get out in the world. And so that's what really inspired me to write the book. But that's where it all stemmed from. I kind of shocked me, to be honest. But then once I found it, I thought, this is what I've been waiting for this whole time in grad school. This is what I was meant to do. And I've absolutely loved and I wouldn't imagine anything different. I absolutely love doing what I do.
Can you get a little bit more into play therapy? For anybody who hasn't heard of it or doesn't know what it is, could you share a little bit more about what it looks like in practice?
Absolutely. So it is. I think a lot of people don't understand what play therapy is. If you do, then you get it. Like, you're all in because it works so well. It is an evidence-based therapeutic modality that really specializes in first gaining a child's trust and safety and really letting them have the lead and letting them, whether it's modifying their behavior, whether it's regulating their emotions, whatever it is. A lot of children don't want to talk or they don't have the skills to talk, whether it's they lack the language and speech skills, whether it's they just don't want to because talking is really intimidating. Staring and making eye contact with an adult is intimidating for a lot of young children. And so instead of doing talk therapy like a lot of people I think are used to knowing, you do therapeutic interventions and techniques, but you do it through play. So instead of having a sit down with a child and trying to talk out what's going on in their lives, whether it's their parents going through a divorce, whether it's their anxiety about something, whatever the case may be, you do it through play. So you do it through a sand tray, telling a story through sand tray and through miniatures that you play with in the sand. Or one thing I know I talk about, especially in my book, and I love stories about talking about how puppets, communicating with kids through puppets, communicating with kids through games, things like that to just really, heal whatever is they're going through. Again, I see a lot of children with ADHD, autism, anxiety, depression, you name it, they are going through it, and play therapy has helped all of them. And a lot of times there's so many kids that I've worked with that have selective mutism, are nonverbal, and I've used play to help give them tools, help give them skills, help, support their autonomy, whatever the case may be. And you can do it, like I said, through play. And it's pretty magical. And like I said, it's evidence-based research that has led to play therapy that it works and that it's effective. And again, the part that I struggle with is that a lot of parents, I feel like, don't value play because I think we're told as adults we're too old to play or it's silly to play. We want our kids to kind of catch up to us and where we are because our brains are fully developed, right? At 25, they're fully developed or around that time, but our children's aren't. Their prefrontal cortex isn't developed yet. So they have 2 decades plus to get there. And so a lot of times talk isn't their modality, it's play. And so that's how you communicate best with them. That's how they conceptualize their world. And that's how you're going to get that deeper connection. They're going to get that better behavior when you communicate with them through play versus talk.
I was just going to say, I think it sounds like the core of it is creating a deeper connection between the adult and child, whatever the relationship is. How can what does that look like in practice? How can parents start to get to that deeper foundation of connection.
Well, all my secrets are in the book. So so I have a whole I mean, the whole book is literally let's like embodies everything about that. But I'll give you a little clip, a little teaser, if you will, because this it could go on. We could have a 5-hour podcast just talking about that question alone.
Yeah.
So, but really and truly, I mean, everything you can create that deeper connection through the language you use, through play moments. I think a lot of times there's this myth that I always want to debunk, that when parents think they have to play with their children, especially when they're little, they think having to sit on the floor with them for a long, extended amount of time, having active dialogue, whether they're playing dolls or cars or whatever the case is. And that's not true. Yes, if you have the energy and there's moments for that, absolutely. Play with your children as much as you'd like or you have the energy for. But a lot of times parents say, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I can't just do that. And you don't have to. And so I think the freedom of knowing, oh, I don't actually have to sit on the floor with them and play for 30 minutes and, suck up all of my time and energy, that you can have these playful moments with them through your everyday conversations, through your everyday moments with them, and being more playful as a parent. So when they do misbehave, it's, instead of jumping to a consequence, jumping to a punitive, like type punishment of saying things like, you're never listening, or your toys are still over the floor, I'm so sick of it, and send them to their room or take their iPad away or whatever the case is, that if you, and I give lots of tools in the book, but if you're able to communicate with them through these playful moments and you already have established that trust, that safety, that connection, then they're going to respond more to that. They're going to be more open to when you do have, let's say, constructive criticism, when they do get a consequence, whatever the case is, which I think is also a myth I try to debunk in the book of, I think when people think of play, they think, oh, everything's sunshine and roses and rainbows. And, I can't just play all the time with my kids at every moment of the day. Like, there has to be, homework has to get done, chores have to get done, etc. And that's the whole thing, is that you incorporate play through those things. I have tips on how to get your kids to do homework through playful activities, or how to get them to do chores in a more fun way so they actually do them. How they clean their toys, whatever the case is, how they eat. I have a whole chapter on picky eaters and how to get them to eat and try new foods through playful experiences. Whatever the case is, I have a solution for you. But in the book specifically, I use 3 modalities, one being play therapy, which is a core component of the book because obviously the title is based off of that. But it also incorporates solution focused therapy, and it also focuses on positive behavior interventions and supports. All 3 evidence based programs are really the combination of them, or the trifecta of how to get better behavior, a deeper connection, more positive communication through those 3. So there's lots of chapters in the book about how to handle anger and defiance, how to handle tantrums and meltdowns, which I know you have a toddler at home, so you'll like that chapter a lot. And then there's also chapters on how to get your kids to listen and behave, how to give a consequence, how to navigate healthy limits and boundaries. And so it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's a lot that goes with it that's really involving routine, structure, limits, boundaries, and in addition to that play, that really is how it all comes together.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so interesting about it not having to be that, like, let's sit down on the floor, we're gonna do this play activity. It's funny because I always say I'm not a play mom, and that I I don't love to sit and like do the figures or like dream up this scenario. I'm just not that kind of mom. It is refreshing to hear, like, we're very silly with each other. We like make connection in different ways, but it's very cool to see that it's something, this archaic idea of what play looks like kind of evolves through the modalities that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is funny because a lot of people do think that, and they think I'm not. And I even say this in the book. Like, I have had so many clients over the years just tell me that's not going to work, and they won't even try it, but they already know, like, that's not going to work. I'm not that kind of parent. I'm not going to sit around and talk through a puppet all day to get my kids to do something. And you don't have to. There's lots of things, and a lot of times too, like I said, going back to that, as moms, no matter what stage of life you're in as a mom, you go through lots of stages, and you're, I think, always going to be exhausted. You're always going to be busy, and play doesn't always fit into that. And I think people like use play as a reward. Like, well, once your homework's done, then you can go play. Once your chores are done, then you can go play. But who's to say that play can't incorporate both? Because this will If you incorporate play and that connection and that playfulness, then you're going to get less defiance. You're going to get less power struggles because you're using their language to get them to do what you need them to do, right? So it's really going to save parents time. It's going to save them energy because, when they're doing these things, and I even say this too, this might help you too, but I use this also, this analogy of that play is like self-care, or like taking care of ourselves or going to the gym. It's something we don't usually put in the forefront. It's like for me personally, I'll speak for myself. When I go to the gym, I'm like dreading it. I'm like, I don't have the time. I'm too tired to go to the gym. I can't take that much time out of my day. But when I do, I love it. I feel refreshed and I get my work done. I'm more effective and more, co-regulated as a parent. And it's kind of like play. Like play is never something I think a lot of parents think, oh, I really want to do this right now. Like I'm so excited to go play with my child. But when they do, there's so many benefits to it. And I have a whole chapter on, for the overtired, overworked parent, an exhausted parent of, ideas you can do that you can be more of a passive parent in that sense, where you let them put on a fashion show for you, let them put on a dance show for you, or, have them play spa so you can lay down and get pampered by your child. And you're still connecting with them through play, but you don't have to actually do much except for lay on the ground or watch them do something for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that there's so many different ways that it can work for you, and adjusting and being flexible to what that could look like is probably part of the game as well.
Yes, just being open to it and having that mindset shift that, oh, I can do this, and just being open to it. That's what I'm asking parents to do is get it and be open to it because it's so much easier than parents think it will be, and it will make your life so much easier and your connection so much better with your child. And who doesn't want healthy, resilient children, and less power struggles and less defiance, less tantrums through these simple, very how to, type of practical steps for the modern parent, for the everyday parent. And for most children, this will work. And so to me, it's like a no brainer, like, oh, you have to do this. But I have to try and convince parents, to actually pick up the book and actually read it. And once they do, I think it's going to be, again, a life changing book for them. But it's getting them to believe in that mentality of, oh, okay, this can work for me. So if I can convince you, since you said you're not really like the play
Yeah.
parent, I'm going to like, hey, if I can convince you, I can convince other moms out there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and what is piquing my attention is, okay, we can convince the kids to do things when it's fun and silly, but how do we use play-based therapy tools when there's like a major meltdown happening? It's the we're up against a wall. How do you kind of boil it down, if you could just give us a snippet from the book of utilizing this tool?
Yeah, so that's a hard one because, and that's like I said, that's where sometimes play doesn't always fit. I will say that. And that's where the parts of the chapters where I talk about, natural consequences. Like if they do something, if they punch their sibling in the face, there is a consequence that there's no way to play base that way out of there, right? I mean, there is certain times where play isn't necessarily used in parenting. 100%. 80% to 20% is kind of my thing, where 80% of the time it can work and maybe even prevent some of those maladaptive behaviors if you use those strategies. But if the child's in the middle of a meltdown, one of my favorite things I read about in the book and just things I use even with my own kids, especially my son, my youngest, he's a lot more feisty and spicy than my oldest, who's very rule following and rule abiding. But there's been times where he'll get upset about something, and he was never the type, neither of my kids were the type of kids that would, lay on the floor and kick and scream and, do that. But I know there's, kids like that out there, and they can work for both. For him, his thing is more he shuts down, he withdraws. And so I talk about that too. And so if he doesn't like something, he'll pout or he'll whine, or he'll just, be upset and kind of not like kind of get into the silent treatment or something like that. And so one of my favorite interventions I use is getting a little sand timer. And on Amazon, you can get a whole set for less than $10. There's like a 1 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, all those different, number of timers. And you get a timer depending on how long you think your child might need to get back to baseline and, regulate themselves. And you say, okay, you can have 5 minutes. I'm going to set the timer, and it's colorful and it's playful, and and they're in the middle of something. Because if they're in the middle of it, they're already far past. You can't really sit and talk with
Right.
them and try and, talk it out with them to regulate. So you have to think of something else outside the box. And so you get this timer, you set it up, and you say, okay, you have 5 minutes. You can scream, you can throw a pillow, as long as they're not hitting something or breaking something. But, you can set up those rules and boundaries in your house. But they can stomp on a pillow, they can punch a pillow, they can yell, they can cry, they can whine, they can kick if they want, as long as they're not hurting themselves or someone else. But you set up all those things, tell them all the things they can do for 5 whole minutes. Maybe they need 10, I don't know. And then you set the timer and let them go at it. You just let them have their full on meltdown right then and there, but they're also watching the timer. When I've done this, they're sitting there going, okay, how much time do I left? And after about a minute or two, they're kind of done. Like they don't want to do it anymore. They're like, okay, I got it out of my system. I'm good now. And then while they're doing that, you don't abandon them. You don't leave them. You don't, send them away to their room to do it. You're still with them. So you're still with them knowing that, that connection piece is still there. You start maybe playing a game like playing Candyland or playing Uno, or maybe making a fun snack in the kitchen that's, fun for them that, that they want to eat. And you do that. So you're still near them. They're doing their thing. You're moving on to the next thing. And so they know, oh, as soon as I'm done with this, I can enjoy that game with my mom, or I can enjoy that snack with my mom. And a lot of times they come out of it sooner than the timer runs out. And then they move on to the next activity. You kind of, I'm going to say distract them, but you kind of reinforce a different type of behavior. And then once they're regulated, you go back to it and say, okay, let's, especially the older they get. Okay, what happened? What kind of, you start doing the talking about regulation. You talk about emotional intelligence. Okay, what were you feeling in that moment? Were you frustrated? Were you angry? Have them name it, have them talk about it. And then you can say things like, okay, how can I support you next time? Or, find out, like I said, be curious about what started it in the first place. Was it just because you said no to something? Was it maybe they are hungry? Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're not feeling well. Figure out what started the behavior so you can try and prevent it the next time. But that's one of my favorite interventions to use, and it works so well. It's one of my tried and true secrets that I feel like, it's a really good tool to have on your back pocket as a parent.
Yeah, for sure. I have what stood out to me when I think you mentioned it in the beginning where you do the play regularly, that when these situations do arise, you guys have that communication and you can learn how to communicate with them in a way that makes sense to them. And that definitely resonates with me because my 3-year-old is no problem telling us how he feels and what he thinks in many various ways. And so for me, it's very hard to communicate in a way that is making sense to him. I'm getting my point across when it's like mass chaos. So I imagine in those times where it's like fun and silly, figuring out a way to communicate that way in a way that makes sense will absolutely help for those other more chaotic times as well.
Exactly. And the older they get and the more they can conceptualize their behaviors, you always want to validate and empathize with their emotions because those are valid. But then not all behaviors are okay. So you have to make sure you do have boundaries and limits for those, right? But at the same time, they as they get older, they can also make a repair and say, okay, what can you do differently next time so this doesn't happen? Or what can we do? What code word can you give me when you're starting to feel all those feelings bubble up in your body before they explode like a volcano? And always use those types of analogies that are fun for kids. Then say the word volcano or have a code word where they know where they can start knowing and recognizing when they're getting dysregulated, when they're getting overstimulated, so you can prevent them in the first place. And so it'll be less and less and minimize not only how many times those tantrums are happening, but the severity and the time that they're actually occurring. Instead of maybe a 10-minute tantrum, it goes down to a 2-minute tantrum or something like that. And then, if they did hurt somebody or if they did, you know, let's say hit you or, whatever the case is, then you can look about teaching the empathy of like, well, and then talking, how do you think that made me feel? And what could you do differently? Is there anyone you need to apologize to? And just have that open dialogue with them so they know there's repercussions and natural consequences to their behaviors. They can have those feelings, but how they act out on them is the skill we're trying to teach them to learn.
Right, right. Well, this has been great. I'm so excited to read the book as a self-described not play mom. I'm excited to see how I can start to integrate it in day-to-day life, and I'm sure it's much easier than I think it is.
Yes, yes. I think you'll love it. I think you'll honestly, I wrote it as practical and easy as possible. Like I said, for the everyday parent who either into play or maybe isn't into play, that can really change their lives. And, like I said, flip to certain chapters depending on what you need in that moment and just make it really fun and really easy, like I said, for parents as much as possible. I didn't make anything theoretical or scientific or too complicated to understand. I really tried to make it where parents will embrace it and say, oh, yeah, I really like that. I'm going to use that intervention with my child. And once they see it works, they're going to buy into it and keep using the rest of the tools in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us where people can find you on social media, website, and then also where they can buy your book.
Absolutely. I would say my first stop that you would go to is my blog, is my website, because it has everything with it has all my socials linked. It has my blogs. It has my all where you can find my podcast, where you can buy the book. So theparentologist.com is where you can go to. I'm very active on Instagram. So you can go to at the parentologist. But I'm also on Threads, TikTok, YouTube, X, you name it. I'm on all of them, pretty much at the parentologist, wherever you go for that on social media. I do have my podcast called the Parentologist Podcast, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, which you're a guest on. So hopefully your community will come back to listen to you on my podcast as well. And then the book is sold. It's on pre-sale right now. It comes out May 5th. So depending when you're listening to this, if it's before May 5th, 2026, it's on pre-sale and pre-order, or if it's after May 5th, it's probably on bookshelves. Amazon can get it to you the next day. But on my website, you can buy it anywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, maybe your independent bookstore, wherever you can. And pre-orders matter. So if your listens before May 5th, they really make a difference. And the more pre-orders that are sold lets everyone know, Amazon and all the bookstores, like, oh, this is a good book. Like, we need to make sure we have lots of copies of it. So those are important too. So
Yes.
yeah, I love your support. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. We'll get all that stuff posted in the show notes. But thank you so much for being on and kind of sharing some tips and tricks from the book. And I'm excited to read.
Thank you. I'm excited for you to read it.